The open sea, a vast, uncharted space, a realm with no borders, no rules. But today, that freedom is under threat. A Russian oil tanker, the Marinera, is heading toward Europe. It's no ordinary vessel. This ship is at the epicenter of a growing global storm. US forces are already on high alert, tracking its every move across the Atlantic. Why? Because this tanker isn't just carrying oil, it's carrying something far more dangerous: tension, power, politics. Just weeks ago, President Trump issued a directive to block oil tankers leaving Venezuela. The US said it was enforcing sanctions. Venezuela called it theft. Now, the Marinera is caught right in the middle of this geopolitical tug of war. This isn't just a shipping route. This is about control, about power, and about the future of the global order. Will America seize this ship, or will Russia assert its dominance? In the next few minutes, we'll break it down. The causes, the mechanisms, and the consequences of what happens next. The stakes could not be higher. For years, Venezuela has been the target of US sanctions, designed to weaken its government and cripple its economy. The sanctions are meant to stop the flow of illicit oil, particularly the ties to Iran, a country also under US pressure. But why does this tanker matter so much? Because it's more than just a vessel carrying crude oil. It's a symbol of defiance against US dominance. For Venezuela, Iran, and Russia, this tanker represents a refusal to comply, a rejection of the international order that the US has enforced for decades. And then there's the US. It views this tanker as a threat to its sanctions regime, a threat to the global order it's worked so hard to shape. This is not just about oil. It's about the control of global resources, the manipulation of markets, the power to influence nations. The roots of this conflict go back decades. Venezuela, once one of the wealthiest countries in Latin America, has been grappling with political instability and economic collapse. Over the years, it became a focal point in the global struggle for influence between the US and its rivals. The US has long imposed sanctions on Venezuela, targeting its oil exports, the lifeblood of the Venezuelan economy. But it was in the last few years, under President Donald Trump, that the sanctions reached a fever pitch. His administration's goal was clear: bring Venezuela to its knees by crippling its oil industry. But Venezuela did not fold. In fact, it doubled down on its alliances with Russia and Iran. The Marinera, a tanker with links to these countries, is now caught in the middle of this growing power struggle. As the world watches, the question remains: who will control Venezuela's oil? And what will the consequences be for the rest of the world if the US gets its way? The first real crisis hit when the US Coast Guard attempted to board the Bella One last month in the Caribbean. This wasn't just a routine interception. The ship was suspected of carrying Iranian oil violating US sanctions. As the Coast Guard approached, the ship's crew made a sudden maneuver. The Bella One changed course and reflagged itself from a Guyanese flag to a Russian one. The ship became the Marinera, and just like that, it was under the protection of Russia. This move wasn't just legal, it was symbolic. It showed that Venezuela and its allies were willing to challenge US dominance. It was a defiant act, a direct challenge to the US sanctions regime. This is where things get complicated. The US sees this as an outright provocation, a violation of its authority. But Russia sees it differently. The Russian government has made it clear. They are monitoring the situation closely, and they are not backing down. Now, with the Marinera sailing toward Europe, the stakes are even higher. The first real crisis hit when the US Coast Guard attempted to board the Bella One last month in the Caribbean. This wasn't just a routine interception. The ship was suspected of carrying Iranian oil violating US sanctions. As the Coast Guard approached, the ship's crew made a sudden maneuver. The Bella One changed course and reflagged itself from a Guyanese flag to a Russian one. The ship became the Marinera, and just like that, it was under the protection of Russia. This move wasn't just legal, it was symbolic. It showed that Venezuela and its allies were willing to challenge US dominance. It was a defiant act, a direct challenge to the US sanctions regime. This is where things get complicated. The US sees this as an outright provocation, a violation of its authority. But Russia sees it differently. The Russian government has made it clear they are monitoring the situation closely and they are not backing down. Now, with the Marinera sailing toward Europe, the stakes are even higher. At first glance, this might seem like just another geopolitical conflict. A tanker, sanctions, a showdown between the US and Russia. But the truth is far more complex. Behind this drama lies a much deeper mechanism. It's about the control of global oil markets. It's about the US asserting its power to enforce sanctions and dictate the flow of resources. But there's more. By targeting ships like the Marinera, the US is sending a message not just to Venezuela or Iran, but to the entire world. It's saying, if you defy our sanctions, we will stop you. We will use our military and our economic power to control trade and enforce our will. And yet, for countries like Venezuela, Iran, and Russia, this is more than just a matter of defiance. It's about survival. It's about finding ways to challenge US dominance in a world where oil is power. The Marinera is the battleground, but the war it represents is much larger. As the tanker makes its way to Europe, the question is, will the US strike, or will this conflict reach a tipping point? As the Marinera nears Europe, the situation reaches a boiling point. US officials are now on high alert. They've prepared for an operation that could change everything. The stakes have never been higher. The Marinera is more than just an oil tanker. It's a symbol of defiance, a direct challenge to US authority. For the US, this is about more than enforcing sanctions. It's about sending a message to the world. If you defy us, there will be consequences. The US is ready to act to make an example out of the Marinera. For Russia, this is a red line. They've made it clear this tanker is under their protection. Any action taken by the US will not go unanswered. The world watches as tensions escalate. Every move made in this confrontation will have global repercussions. The question now is simple. Who will blink first? As tensions rise between the US and Russia, it's easy to forget the people caught in the middle. The people of Venezuela, the people of Iran, and yes, even the people in Europe. They're the ones who will feel the effects of this geopolitical struggle. For the people of Venezuela, the sanctions have already hit hard. The country is facing a dire economic crisis. Basic goods are in short supply, and the oil industry, once the country's lifeblood, is now crippled. In Europe, the consequences of this conflict are no less severe. An interruption in oil shipments could cause prices to soar. People will feel it at the gas pump, in their wallets, and in their daily lives. But the cost isn't just financial. It's political, it's social. This conflict is about more than just oil. It's about real lives, real struggles, and real consequences. For the people involved, this is no longer just a diplomatic battle. As the Marinera nears European shores, the global impact becomes impossible to ignore. This isn't just a standoff between the US and Russia. It's a battle for control of the global oil market. And it's already having ripple effects around the world. In Asia, markets are on edge. Oil prices are fluctuating wildly as investors worry about the potential for disruption. In the Middle East, countries are watching closely. The outcome of this crisis could shift alliances and alter the balance of power. If the US succeeds in intercepting the Marinera, it sends a message to every nation in the region. The US is willing to act no matter the cost. For Russia, this is more than just about one tanker. It's a challenge to their influence in the region and their global standing. The US is testing their resolve, and Russia will respond. The world is holding its breath. Every decision made in the coming days will have far-reaching consequences. What happens next will shape the future of global politics and trade. As we look ahead, the future of this conflict could unfold in several ways. Scenario 1, the best-case outcome. The US decides to back off, avoiding direct confrontation. In this scenario, diplomatic negotiations take center stage. The Marinera continues its journey, and tensions gradually ease. The sanctions regime remains in place, but without further escalation. Scenario 2, the middle ground. The US intercepts the tanker, but instead of a full-scale military operation, they engage in a limited action, perhaps boarding the ship and seizing its cargo. This sends a clear message, but avoids the kind of warlike confrontation that would destabilize the region. The global oil market faces some disruption, but it's contained. Scenario 3, the worst-case scenario. The US takes aggressive military action, sinking or destroying the Marinera. This leads to an all-out geopolitical crisis. Russia retaliates, and the conflict spirals into a larger, more dangerous confrontation. The global economy is thrown into turmoil, and the world is plunged into uncertainty. The future then depends on one question: how far are these powers willing to go? As we conclude this analysis, the implications of this crisis are clear. The conflict over the Marinera is not just about one ship or even about oil. It's about power. It's about control. And it's about the future of global order. For the US, this is a chance to enforce its sanctions and assert its authority. For Russia, this is a test of their influence and their resolve. But for the rest of the world, this is a moment of reckoning. What happens next will shape the way nations interact, how power is distributed, and how international law is respected. The Marinera is more than just a tanker. It's a symbol of a new era, one where global power struggles are played out on the high seas and where the balance of power can shift in an instant. The question remains, will the world be shaped by diplomacy and cooperation, or by confrontation and conflict? Thank you for watching. If you found this analysis insightful, don't forget to like and share